Hello, and welcome to a special edition of Suzi's Book Bag, in which we mark the passing of the extraordinary Northern Irish poet Michael Longley, who died just a few days ago. As many of the obituaries have pointed out, he was the last in the great triumvirate of poets of the region, Seamus Heaney, who died in 2013, and the wonderful Derek Mann. Longley was absolutely up there in terms of status. So it's a very sad loss. And I've been marking that by spending the last few days since I heard, reading some of his collections. I've got his collection here, The Weather in Japan, that netted him the T.S. Eliot Prize in 2000. I've also got Snow, Water and 100 Doors. These are all Jonathan Cape collections, and it's very nice to spend a day or so really doing a deep dive into the work of somebody like Michael Longley. Only a few months ago, a collected, or I think new and selected poems was published, a big chunky volume to celebrate his 85th birthday, getting excellent reviews and prompting people to reassess his work and look again at his very long career in poetry. I have this marvellous book here, The Oxford Companion to 20th Century Poetry. And when somebody dies who's in this book, you know, it says the sort of year of birth and a dash and a blank. I fill in, sadly, when they are no longer with us. So we'll just sort of see what the this was edited by a wonderful poet and editor, Ian Hamilton. So I'll just read a little bit about what they say about the poems, the work of Michael Longley. Michael Longley is a poet of the personal life, a quiet, punctilious observer of love and landscape, particularly that of County Mayo. His exact and elegant notations, often minimalist in their brevity, are nevertheless enlivened by a certain disconcerting strangeness in which realism may bewilderingly swerve into fantasy or even the surreal, natural descriptions into emblem, the quotidian into parable, topographical into imaginary location. And certainly in the work that I've read over the last day or so, I'm really getting the exact and elegant notations and the minimalism, and he's a master of the very brief, short lyric, and a master of the line as well. And I think to illustrate that, I shall read something from The Weather in Japan. Now, of course, being a Northern Ireland poet, they often felt constrained to be, to some extent, political poets and to talk about the political situation in Northern Ireland. And I think sometimes poets with their minds on higher things find that a little bit of a burden. But nevertheless, it was something that really all three of the poets had to wrestle with in their own way. Here is a short poem that stuck out for me. It's called A Prayer. In our country, they are desecrating churches. May the rain that pours in pour into the font, because no snowflake ever falls in the wrong place. May snow lie on the altar like an altar cloth. And one of the things I noticed in certainly the way this collection is put together and other collections I've looked at, he was very good at grouping his poems. So you might get an image of snow running through various poems, or a series of poems about his father who fought in the First World War. So again, coming at war and conflict and violence from a different angle from just reporting of what's going on in your backyard, as it was. I mean, there were some poems where quilts are mentioned, and he liked writing about the natural world, as has been said, but he had a great attention and sensitivity to flowers, wild flowers, and I think that is that is demonstrated in the next poem of his that I'm going to read. This is from the collection Snow Water. If I can find this poem, here it is. A Norwegian Wedding. Because the Leprosy Museum is still closed, we find ourselves in St. Olav's, eavesdropping on a Norwegian wedding. The Lutheran light picks us out from among the small congregation. How few friends anyone has. I'm glad we came. Christ holds his hands up high above the lovers and fits his death into the narrow window. Oh, his sore hands. How many friends does a leper have? Bride and bridegroom walk past us and into the rain. It is mid-May. All of the roads out of Bergen are bordered with ladies' smock and wooden enemies. Beautiful way of bringing in the wildflowers at the end of that marvellous poem. And finally, I think, another of his great themes, which he shares with Heaney, is a love of Homer and a way of bringing Homeric themes, stories of Achilles and Hector, and the sort of pity and the pain and the vaingloriousness and the terror of war, which is clearly speaking to the 20th century and the 21st century, but it is given this this timeless approach, as Heaney did also with his love of Homer. But I'm going to read something that I think it's a nice way to round off this discussion of the work of Longley, and this is called The Beech Tree. Leaning back like a lover against this beech tree's 200-year-old pewter trunk, I look up through skylights into the leafy cumulus and join everybody who has teetered where these huge roots spread far and wide our motionless, mossy dance. As though I begin my eclogues with a beech, as Virgil does, the brown envelopes unfolding like fans, their transparent downy leaves. Tassels and prickly cups massed, a fall of vermilion and copper and gold. Then room in the branches for the full moon and her dusty lakes. Winter and the poet who recollects his younger self and improvises a last line for the Georgics about snoozing under the beech tree's canopy. Sleep well, dear poet Michael Longley. I love the way he brings Virgil in and Virgil's eclogues and drags in the whole history of poets from the classical era onwards who have written so sensitively about the natural world. And I love that line, that finding room in the branches for the full moon. Beautiful, beautiful piece of work. I never met Michael Longley, sadly. I did meet Seamus Heaney in Dublin. I was very overawed. Unfortunately, I was with somebody who knew him quite well. So she chatted away while I basked in the warmth. It was like a radiator. He was such a warm human being, you could really tell. So sadly, I didn't meet Michael Longley, but you know, we're meeting him through the work. I suspect he'd like it that way. I also looked at this book. This is a collection of essays by his wife, the critic Edna Longley, the wonderful Irish critic. And I think with critics, you don't have to agree with them. It can be very fruitful to disagree with a critic. They help you sharpen your own thoughts. But with Edna Longley, I get this thing like, wow, that's exactly what I think, but she has expressed it so much more succinctly and brilliantly than I could. So this is Poetry and Posterity, a collection of essays that came out via Blood Axe. So it's been a very nice dive. That came out in 2000 as well, the same year as The Weather in Japan. What a powerhouse literary couple they were. And now, just briefly, I would like to mark the passing of someone I did meet quite a few times, the novelist Jeff Nicholson, who I always enjoyed meeting. He was a very stimulating and sharp person. I guess I knew him more when the book I'm going to talk about came out, a book called Bleeding London, which I think I was at Time Out then, but a marvelous modern thriller, literary novel about London, and the detail I remember in it is the character trying to walk down every road in the A to Z of London, marking them all off. I mean, if you're a lover of London, it's sort of the dream. If you had absolutely nothing else to do, what would that be like, to walk down every single street in the A to Z? And of course, the thing about the A to Z is it's now a museum piece itself. I got one out only the other day to help a friend plot a route, and he was looking at it like, who does that? Who looks at a map in a book to figure out where they're going to go? So yeah, the sense of time passing is so intense. And to go back to Longley, who wrote brilliantly about his father. So Longley was born in 1939, but his father was born, I think, in the 1890s. So really, it's a long, it's a link in the chain that has been snapped that actually connected all of us to such a long stretch of time. So really makes you think about these things when somebody of Michael Longley's stature dies. And so check out Bleeding London by Jeff Nicholson. I'll try and find it myself. I've got it somewhere. It'd be very interesting to see if it still stands up. I'm sure it will. It impressed me profoundly when it came out. And as I say, it was always lovely to talk to Jeff. So farewell, Michael Longley. Farewell, Jeff Nicholson. You will be remembered long in the book bag and elsewhere, I'm sure. Thank you very much for watching, for listening. Please like and subscribe, and watch out. We will bring some more interesting literary information and literary interviews to you soon. Thanks very much. Goodbye.